Whether you are running a household or a multi-million-dollar operation, you can be the CEO of your own life. And our guest today has an incredible story and some serious wisdom to help you do exactly that. Erin Hohnbaum is the CEO, owner, and founder of the award-winning boutique chain E.Leigh's Contemporary Boutiques, which she started at the age of 26 when she took the leap of faith, quit her full-time public relations gig, and started her business as an in-home trunk show. We're going to get all into her story and the background. It's such a fun journey. But flash forward 8 years, her boutique now spans 3 states and is a multi-million-dollar operation. Erin says while her company has grown and evolved over the past 8 years, her mission has always stayed the same: to create a space where women feel strong, empowered, and better, leaving her doors than when they came in. And I have a feeling this interview is going to leave you feeling the same. Welcome back to Powerhouse Women, the podcast. I have the pleasure today of interviewing a true powerhouse. I found one in the wild. And if you could see us on video, you could see that really makes sense because she's wearing the most fabulous leopard blazer. And I almost ran to my closet and put mine on so we could have like a twinning moment, but
Twinsies.
We didn't go that far. So sorry, folks. But Erin, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Ever since we met, I decided it's your turn. I just knew that this was going to be such a beautiful friendship. So thank you for inviting me.
Agreed. I could not agree more. Before we turned the microphone on, we were reliving that first moment. Like most good friendships, we really started courting each other via Instagram.
Yes, of course.
And
isn't that how everything starts nowadays?
Seriously. It's so true. I wasn't around and dating during the time of social media, but I would imagine that's how I meet all of my girl friendship dates.
Right.
So
that's how everything. Isn't there even like a Bumble for friends now?
There is. It's Bumble BFF, and we love them. They are doing such cool things because it's true. In this day and age, we're more connected than ever. And sometimes we just need that little push to be able to meet people that we were really meant to meet.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes, and you probably feel this all the time, is we work in so much of the social media space that sometimes you forget, you see these like people that just look amazing and awesome and they're doing all these really cool things and you forget they're actual real people.
Yes.
They're just like you. But we can kind of get a little disillusioned by that whole social media veil where, everything's filtered and beautiful and the highlight reel. And sometimes I think it's nice. I was telling another girl I'm friends with, I was like, you forget that you see all these beautiful influencers and bloggers. And I was like, but I get to see behind the scenes of like what it takes to make that picture happen. And the lighting and the pinning and the tucking and the, 100 different frames that you're shooting just to get that one photo. So
one photo for a tiny little square.
Yes, exactly.
So true.
Exactly.
So, we had a chance to connect through our mutual friend, Christina, and her incredible event in Austin. Christina was actually guest number 2 on the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that episode, everyone, you can go back. I think it's episode number 4. But as it works, Christina and I met through just the most fun situation through a business mastermind. And then because she and I are so like-minded, she brought this whole group of new incredible women into my life, and Erin being one of those. And we were messaging a bit on Instagram, knowing we would both be attending this event. And then it was sort of like we locked eyes at the VIP night and we didn't even say words. I think we just hugged. No, that was when I knew.
We did. I was actually having lunch with Christina last week and said that. I was like, Lindsay and I was like, I don't think I've ever had a meeting like that. I was like, I'm pretty warm and like, I love meeting new people. I was like, we didn't even speak. We just locked eyes, walked towards each other and hugged. And I loved it. I knew we were soul sisters right off the bat, right?
It's true. It's so true. That's how you know. I warn people all the time. I am a hugger. I will probably invade your personal space at some point. But so then I knew I loved you from first hug. But when you took the stage and shared your story was when I knew that I had to have you on the podcast, because this show is really built around the mission to help women get out of their own way and into action around their ideas. And I think that starts with those of us who are a few steps ahead in the journey being real about how not together we have it and how we are figuring this all out as we go. And I was so
100%.
impressed by not only you've created a fashion empire, and we're going to get into this story, but you were so real. I was laughing. I'm pretty sure I cried during your talk as well, and felt every scope of emotion because I felt like you were me and I was you. And so I'm excited to share that with our listeners today. And, I remember the first place in your talk that I just really saw myself leaning in. You talked about a pivotal conversation with your dad and really what set off this entire crazy roller coaster of entrepreneurship. Do you want to start there and just share a little bit of what this has looked like for you?
His wisdom has nothing to do with me. I feel like all of my wisdom is borrowed wisdom is what I like to say. But then I realized that everyone's wisdom is borrowed wisdom somewhere. So yeah, I was 26. And if I'm being really raw and honest, I was in a place where I just was really unhappy. I was very, very unhappy in my situation in life. I was single. I had my whole life ahead of me. I had, no ties, no real obligations except, a downtown apartment rent every single month. But somehow, some way, I had so much going for me, and I just found myself in a really, really awful spot. I was severely depressed. Had horrible, debilitating anxiety every single day, and was just at a job where I truly felt like I was becoming less of the woman that I wanted to be. Every single day, I saw myself getting further and further away from that. I'm very close with my dad, and I'm extraordinarily fortunate to have had him as a mentor. And now closing in on 35, I really truly call him a friend. But he raised me with some wonderful knowledge that I think I've been incredibly fortunate to learn at such a young age. So he's a big believer in Louise Hay and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and the Law of Attraction and Abraham Hicks and all these beautiful, beautiful spiritual and mindset coaches and teachers. And that's kind of how he's always treated me growing up. So whenever I found myself in this horrible rut, we were at dinner. He had taken me out to dinner. I think we were at Red Lobster. Super embarrassing.
Fancy.
Biscuits are good. Okay. We were sitting there in the restaurant, and I was just nonstop complaining about my life, and my situation and what was happening at work. And my dad, who is truly the kindest, loveliest human being on the planet, kind of slammed his hands down on the table and was like, I am so sick of hearing you complain about your life. You can do anything you want. Not everyone gets that opportunity, but you have the power to do anything you want in this life. And you're sitting here complaining about a job. You need to find something you love, something you do for free, and figure out a way to make money doing it. And those words have turned out to be some of the most powerful words of my entire life. After the initial shock of my father being so serious with me, because that was so out of character for him and just not his typical demeanor, I went home that night and I started really reeling over what my next step was. And I'd always kind of had this little dream of E.Leigh's and owning a clothing boutique. And that's really where it got started. I actually ended up quitting my job just a couple days after that. And the next day after I quit my job, I was down at City Hall filing for my business license. So,
talk about taking the leap. And that's a question I get asked a lot on podcasts. We've had this conversation with a few guests on the show because I do think it's different for everyone. Mm-hmm. But how did you know that for you it was the right choice just to completely burn the boats and go all in versus build it as like a side hustle and make the transition slowly?
Yes. Well, I think that, everyone's situation, everyone's story is so different. And so when I talk to, especially young women who are ready to do something different in their lives, the first question I ask is, let's get really honest about what your home situation looks like. I was fortunate enough that it was prior to kids, prior to marriage. So really I was making decisions on my own. I had a little bit of savings, and then I had someone who, my dad, I'd presented kind of a business plan to him and said, this is what I think I can do. Will you give me some time to make this happen? And so really I would not have been able to just totally, rip the Band-Aid off as quickly if I hadn't have people in place that supported me along that journey. So I think it looks different for everyone. And I think whenever I'm talking to someone who maybe isn't in that position, there's a lot of things that I currently want to do right now. Besides E.Leigh's, but let's be honest, E.Leigh's makes me money. And I love E.Leigh's. And so I can't just be like, I'm just going to, step out of this for 6 months and go do this other side hustle. Those transitions look a little different now. And I totally get that. But for me at that time, made it a little bit easier for me to say, hey, give me 7 or 8 months to try to make this work. Will you support me doing this? So that kind of mitigated a little bit of the fear, not all the fear, because I had a lot of pride on the line and a lot of people watching to see how this works out. But it mitigated the financial worry a tiny, tiny bit.
And I love that you shared that honesty, because sometimes there's like this very glamorous picture painted of, well, I just took the leap and I put everything on credit cards and I bet on myself. And that's not often a possibility for so many women. I've talked to just as many. My transition was gradual. Mine was 2.5 years.
Yes.
I've talked to people who are every place in the middle of that spectrum. And you're right, it's so different. And I love that honest perspective that oftentimes if you look behind the scenes, there was someone who was willing to financially back them, or in my situation, I was married at the time already, so I had a dual income household. So wherever you're at, sister, listening to this, just know that your story is going to look just as unique as each of ours has.
Totally. And it doesn't mean that yours isn't going to be just as successful or more successful than my story or even your story, Lindsay. But yeah, I think it depends on what space you're in life. And I think the number one word that pops into my head whenever you started talking about this question was action, just to keep moving. And so that's what I did. And then also, one thing that I would go to stores and other boutiques in town, and I did not start out by having a brick and mortar. I worked for over a year to build up clientele. I was selling out of the trunk of my 2001 yellow Xterra, if we want to get real on the
Real
show.
specific.
Yes. So it was not a glamorous operation. I was doing everything out of my apartment. My dad built my fitting rooms in my first store. I stained the floors. I remember being there at 3 a.m. by myself in just grungy clothing. And I could hear all the young people coming from the bars down the street at like 2 a.m. And I was sitting there on my hands and knees staining my floors. So, I would definitely had to be frugal, and not everything's going to start out as this like super glamorous operation in the beginning. And that's okay too. I think that kind of builds you a little street cred.
I completely agree. And that was actually where I wanted to have you talk a little bit next about those early days of doing the trunk shows and essentially starting a boutique out of a spare bedroom. Talk about
literally,
Now you have, what is it, 5 locations?
We do have 5 locations in 3 states. Yes.
And so it's very easy for someone just coming into the picture and seeing your story to overlook the humble beginnings and that street cred that you built. So will you talk a little bit about those early days and when you say action, what did action look like for you? You filed for that business license, then what?
A lot of research. I did a lot of reading online. Google is my best friend now to this day. It's a joke around the office because if you don't have the answer, I'm like, just Google it. Like, I'm just going to Google that. So, I think a lot of research, just a lot of reading. I didn't have money to pay an attorney or a CPA early on in the venture. So really just trying to figure out. And then I didn't have all the perfect answers for everything.
Mm.
So I remember the first time I went to market, it was with one of my best friends I'd convinced to come along with me. I wore 4.5-inch heels, which is a joke. If you go to market in 4.5-inch heels, you are automatically like cloned as the newbie.
The new
you're like,
girl. And
you're like,
talk
that
about
girl has no idea. She's going to be on her feet all day long for like 9 hours working.
And market is like a buying trip where you go and you source the items for your store. Is that right? Okay,
Yes.
I
It's like
thought
all the wholesalers come together. It's specific dates in they host it in different cities around the US. But yeah, if you're wearing large heels, everyone can tell that you're definitely probably don't know what you're doing.
that's
That was
funny.
me. And I remember being in a showroom and not understanding how anything worked. And a showroom is where they house a lot of the wholesalers will rent a space in these quote unquote showrooms where sales reps will sell you different lines. And I had no idea what the terminology meant. I remember taking notes in my phone and then Googling it, like leaving to go to the hallway to Google and try to figure out what was going on because I was so confused. So lots of humble beginnings. I think that I also had a very strong respect for the money and the money that I was loaning from my father, because I knew I was like, hey, this isn't my money. So if you're being loaned money from a bank, I think it's a really good perspective to say, this isn't really my money. I'm going to have to pay this back to someone. So with every decision and everything I needed to spend money on, I would really deeply consider, like, is this necessary? Where does this fit in my budget? And how I can make this work. So a lot of problem solving, a lot of workarounds. I didn't even have money to hire employees. So like you mentioned, I did trunk shows. I would borrow my dad's Honda Ridgeline truck. I would rent the biggest U-Haul trailer that they had, and I would load it up by myself. Baton Rouge, Memphis, Nashville, Dallas, New Orleans, and I would have to unload the trailer by myself, set up an entire, usually it was I think a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 20 booth, depending on the show, and then sell merchandise all day long. And then I would load it up and come home. But I think one of the biggest keys when you're first starting out is being a problem solver. And not being afraid to say, okay, this isn't the way that maybe this person did it, and this isn't the traditional route to go, but I'm going to make this happen. And so I will pull out all the stops to do this and do the work.
Oh my goodness. I wish we could like underline and draw stars around that, what you just said about being a problem solver and being resourceful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Sometimes I caught myself feeling this at times where I looked at it as a disadvantage that I didn't know how it was supposed to look. Perfect example, planning my first event. I didn't know how to plan an event. But now looking back, that had me think of outside the box ideas, find people on Craigslist to build my stage, or things that just weren't quote unquote the traditional approach to hosting a big event, but I didn't know any better. And I think it's important for women to know sometimes not knowing how it's supposed to look is your best asset, because you're going to think of new ways to do something that no one else would have thought of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The minute you were talking about that, I was like, I feel like that is the space you almost want to breathe into. Sometimes, whenever we're looking at a new site location, and there's pros and cons, yes, I am a little bit smarter about how much I want to spend on things, or, negotiation tactics. I can come in with a little bit more strength behind that. But at the same time, I just wish I had a little bit of the chutzpah that I used to have at 26, where I was like, I didn't care. You weren't going to tell me no. This is what I'm going to do. And I would do anything to make it happen. And I was so freaking resourceful. I think sometimes you know too much, especially if I can just, click a button and pay for that, and it's going to come straight to me, or it's going to look really beautiful. Even looking at my E.Leigh's profit and loss statements monthly and looking at that and saying, okay, well, how can we all be a little bit more of the Erin Hohnbaum at 26, cut some of these expenses down, and be a little bit more resourceful. So that's actually one of the tenets of our E.Leigh's, like, here we are, is resourceur. We can do a lot with a little. That's one of our quotes, do a lot with a little. So
I love that so much. And so your whole talk at the event really was built around this idea of being the CEO of your own life. And I feel like we're hitting on so many of the points to what we would probably both say would equate to a woman being the CEO of her own life. But I loved just that whole mentality, because whether we have women in our community who are business owners, who would like to be someday, and then others who love their job and absolutely see themselves staying in the corporate 9-to-5 world for the long term. And I think that's something I've struggled a little bit with as we built the community, is making sure women know there's a difference between, you don't have to be an entrepreneur or to be a CEO to have a CEO mentality of just being the CEO of your life, regardless of who's paying your paycheck. And there were a couple of things that I jotted down, and I go back to these notes and I remind myself of your words of wisdom, because these are still maybe some of the biggest areas that I am working on, but they absolutely fit into just the picture that I have in my mind of what it looks like for me to step into that next level of being the CEO of my own life, business, relationships, all of it together. And the first one, this is probably the one I have admitted this before, this is no secret to the audience, but the first one that you talked about was asking for help.
Yes.
Talk about the importance of asking for help if we're going to be the CEO of our lives. And I'm just going to sit back and take notes because this is something I'm working on. I've just, even this morning, was challenged by the fact that I'm still doing things myself that really should be delegated to someone else.
Well, and let me just start out by saying that I truly believe we all teach what we need to learn best ourselves. True. So anytime, like during that speech, I could probably have put that on repeat and played that like while I'm in the shower, getting ready for work every morning for myself.
Yes.
Because I think that we all are drawn to those lessons that we deeply need to learn ourselves or need even deeper and further practice on. So when I talk about being the CEO of your own life, it's exactly what you said, Lindsay. It doesn't matter if you're running the company, if you're running a household, if you're just running yourself, just taking that ownership and saying, you know what? I'm controlling everything. I'm controlling my response in every area of my life. And I'm preparing myself and getting myself in a good space in every area. So asking for help for me is really, really hard. And there have been moments in my life where, like, for example, I have an amazing executive assistant. She's awesome. She has just learned how I like to respond to things. But for example, I still book all of my own travel. I am such a control freak about travel. I know where I want to sit on a plane. I know if we have to pre-order meals, if it's a long flight, I know what I want. I know what kind of rental car I want. I know the company that I want. I have all these details that I don't trust anyone else with. But one thing that I try to keep in mind, and this is another lesson from my dad, who maybe you should have had him on the podcast.
We'll do a part 2.
Instead of me. But, he brought up that I'm a control freak. And I really do think that perfection is the enemy of execution. And so perfection will kind of stop me in my tracks when I get in my head about things. So I really work every single day, try to work around that. But one thing he brought up to me is he was like, so you're not the best at everything. He's like, that's just a fact. And what about if there's someone else on your team who could actually do this better than you could?
Wow.
And you're not even asking them for help. And he was using this in the context of the business. These are people I pay to be here every day. But I think it's really valid in all of life. One thing I have a really struggle with is my husband and I are very competitive. We love each other, but I'm a 3, an Enneagram 3. He's an Enneagram 5. And that's one place where we challenge, is we're both highly competitive people in different ways. But when I started wrapping my head around the idea, especially with things around the home is that he can do a lot of these things much better than I can. So why am I not enlisting these people's help? And to truly, what great CEOs do is they find the best people to do all the things. You can't be a CEO and do every single thing on your to-do list. CEOs delegate. And to me, delegation equals asking for help in real life.
Yeah.
So if you really truly want to live in that space and use your gifts, I think it's imperative that we learn to lean into that and lean into other people. I love your powerhouse women saying, if we're not meant to do this alone. And I think that's not just in a community of friendship to lean on. I think that's in business, that's in partnership, home life, work life, fitness life. Sometimes you need a personal trainer. Sometimes you need a guide. So that's how I try to wrap my head around asking for help. This is me being the CEO of my own life and enlisting the best of the best, and asking for their assistance.
And I think you really nailed it when it comes to what I want to say most women, but I'll even just say myself. And I think a lot of women would find themselves in the same place too. But almost having to wrestle with, what does it mean about me if I'm asking for help?
Yes.
And getting my ego out of the way, that not only am I not the best at everything, but I'm stealing the opportunity for someone else to be in their gifts if I'm doing it all by myself. And I really struggle with this. I love you shared something that is my kind of best kept secret. This is what keeps my world going round, is I have the most amazing house cleaner. Because I truly, when Marie Kondo talks about sparks joy, cleaning my house does not spark joy.
Not anywhere close.
Joy.
No, actually, I live in the South. So for all of you listeners that don't live in the South, we're still a little backwards in some things. And I was actually asked a question by a very old woman yesterday. She was like, "Oh, I haven't seen you since your wedding, and I don't understand how you work all the time and travel all the time." And the exact quote was, "and still keep house." And I was like, well, I was just very honest. I was like, I don't keep house. I have a housekeeper. She comes once a week. And it helps that my husband is a very tidy man and he keeps house quite a bit too. So, definitely. Yeah. I am not the girl that you want to enlist in a home makeover of coming and scrubbing and cleaning things out. That is not my gift.
Yes. And it was hard. I think I grew up with the mother who is, and she still is. My mother is like just she is an angel on earth. And realizing that I'm very different, and realizing that I think what gave me my power back around it, because I'd be working from home and I would feel so guilty that someone was cleaning my house while I was physically there, but also realizing I'm investing in another woman's dream. This woman has her own business, a cleaning business. And when I started to see it as this macro perspective, that helped me spill over into thinking about, where can I apply that to my business? Where can I apply that to other things in life where I can invest in other people's dream and hire them to do the things that truly, not even, it's way more than the money that I part with in hiring this service out. It's what is the emotional energy, not even just the time, but a lot of time it's where does it steal my creative energy or the time that I could be using to serve the world in the way that I am uniquely gifted.
Absolutely.
It's been tough, but it's been a process that the more I've stepped into has opened up way more possibility. And I heard that when you were sharing your own perspective on that, because I think as women, we have a little bit harder time asking for help than maybe some of our male counterparts do.
100%. My husband will tell me every single morning, the first thing he asks me is, "What can I help you with today?" But the second thing is he follows up with is, "Here's what I need from you today." So he always asks first, which I think is a great way to approach just people in general, is, "Hey, how can I serve you today?" But then, "Hey, also these things have been on my to-do list and I really want to get them knocked off, but I'm going to need your help with this." So I think that's a nice way too, to engage in the morning with your partner. If you need something out of them, is always saying, "How can I serve you first? How can
That's so good. Oh my goodness. And I mean that brings up a whole other conversation too with the dynamic of our partnerships and being these powerhouses in business. And I love that because what I learned between Elliot and I is that he gets to serve me and see the impact he's making on my life or the business when I'm willing to ask. And that was probably an area I had the hardest time asking for help. And he's ready and willing to do so. I just wasn't asking.
Yeah, no. And I think it's a comfort level too, is
Yeah.
I always want to be seen as very independent and strong and I
Hmm.
can do things on my own. And wrapping my head around the idea that just because someone asks for my help, I never think that they're weak. That doesn't, and
Right.
reframing that and kind of flipping it around saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Just because I ask someone for advice or for assistance, maybe they're not thinking that I'm weak
Yeah.
or less than, or, whatever energy you're feeling, but really sitting with that and saying, why am I feeling this way? Like, what's the root cause of this?
Right.
Has helped me too.
And this actually is a perfect segue into the second piece that I wrote down, put stars, circles, unicorns next to that you shared. And I think this is so big for all of us to hear on a daily basis is being a CEO of your life means defining success on your own terms, not
Oh,
in
amen.
relation to what other people say success is. So how has this played out in your own journey?
Oh gosh, I feel like this is so evolving for me, and
Mhm.
it's evolving at every stage. And with every passing year, I start feeling differently about this. At one point, I really thought there was going to be this pinnacle in my career where I felt like, wow, I've made it. I'm the pinnacle of success. And quickly, after a few years, I realized that that moment is not coming. I really think that at this stage of my life, I believe that success is an unfolding of a journey. And I personally want to measure my success by a couple things. How much fun am I having? How much joy is present in my life every single day? I don't want to mitigate the financial aspect of success in the journey because I believe that, money is only a problem when you don't have enough. And, that's up to you to decide what enough means. So money is very important, but as long as I am able to pay for my life, I feel financially secure, I'm able to put money in savings. That next checked box is how much joy am I experiencing every single
Mm.
day. Um, I like to call it living in flow whenever you are able to just live into a space. And this doesn't mean that you're not working your butt off every single day, hustling. It just means that you're living from a space of where you're taking inspired action, where that action,
Mhm.
it might not turn out the way you want it to every single time, but it feels really good. And you're able to say, you know what, that didn't work out the way I had anticipated, but I still feel really good about where I'm headed. I feel really optimistic about this next stage. And especially when things don't go as planned, you're able to live life from a space of, what is this teaching me? How is this serving me? Because one thing I've learned in my journey is that oftentimes when things don't work out as planned, it's there's something down the line that is going to work out. And
That's so good.
because of this no, or this negative experience, or this not working out in the way that I had planned, something greater is on the horizon. So just having that faith and leaving that space for something better is going to come. What is this teaching me? And how is this experience serving me?
Have you always been able to view challenges or hiccups or doors slamming in your face in that light, or was that a gradual process?
Oh my gosh, no. No, 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 no. So I still don't. That is a moment that comes with practice, a lot
Yeah.
of patience and practice, and also experience in just watching things
Mhm.
unfold. Because you can't see it initially. You can't be like, okay, well, this really great thing, and a year from now, because this happened, or because I lost a really great employee, I'm sure that a month and a half from now, the perfect person for this position is going to show up. You only
Yeah.
learn that from experience. But then also, I think that we all think, that everyone just, whenever they hear me say that I'm just reacting in that way initially right off the bat. I call it going to crazy town. So sometimes whenever I have a freak out moment or I'm really upset about something, I go to crazy town. And what I like to say is that whenever you're living in that space, you go to crazy town for like 2 minutes and not 2 months.
Yeah.
So I might initially kind of have like a little, that little hitch in your gut. That's the first thing that comes up. But when I'm living in this space and through a lot of practice, then the peace comes. The peace
Yeah.
comes right after that. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect practice.
Mhm.
But it's something that has really helped me, just reframing that mindset over the years.
Oh, and amen to going to crazy town. And I think it's important sometimes to fully experience, if you're pissed, like fully experience that with the
Yes.
commitment that I love how you said, you set a time limit on it. Maybe it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, like allow yourself to feel the sadness, the anger, the frustration, whatever it is and I think we can even tie this back to the resourceful mindset of, okay, now what?
What's
This
next?
happened, now what? And then I think one of the things that's helped me in the journey before I had all of the evidence, now, like you said, I think I have evidence that when an opportunity falls through or when something doesn't turn out the way that I had expected or planned, I have plenty of evidence that it's tied to something bigger, it's tied to something better. But before I had that, I think the trust just had to come from that place of, well, what can I learn from this? And I
Right.
love, my ears perked up when you shared that question too. So if you're earlier in the journey and still having trouble, like really truly embodying that hope that there's something better on the horizon, because you can't just fake it. You can't just
No.
this isn't just like an Instagram quote that you can throw up and everything will be okay. It's tough. It's tough in those moments where you don't understand why a friendship ended or a business relationship ended, to have that hope that there's something better. But I think asking questions in the moment, having your moment to feel all the feels, and then asking questions, what can I learn from this? What can I do better next time this situation comes around? Help me to at least take those first awkward steps forward out of that situation. And I love everything you shared there. That's so good.
And I can tell you that there has been so many tears over the years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of, I think one of my rituals is if I'm just really in my feels, if, things just aren't hitting and they're not going where they should be, I'll say, you know what, I've got to go home and I've got to take a hot bath and I need to cry for like 10 minutes and I'll be fine. And I'll even tell my husband, I'm like, listen, I'm probably going to go cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes. I'm fine. Like, I'm totally fine. So I don't want to freak you out, but I am going to go have like a little cry in the bathroom. And he's totally like, he knows it now. He's like, she's going to
Yeah.
come and she's going to come out, like, she's going to come out swinging out of that bathroom. Because sometimes you have to feel that. And if
Yeah.
you really, whenever in those moments of crazy town or whatever you call your moments, I think for me, the underlying emotion there is generally fear.
Mm.
It's fear that I'm not going to live up to expectations, fear that I'm not good enough, fear that all this hard work and effort I've put out is not going to come to fruition. It's just so much fear. And really, if you don't make space to feel that and acknowledge that, that's going to show up somewhere else in your life.
So
Um,
true.
and it's going to come out. It's just not going to come out in as nice of a way as if you just allowed that to unfold.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think especially as women in a business sense, or we could take this even just in the being the CEO of your own life. I've always had it confused, feeling fear or being outward about my insecurities and my doubts as a sign of weakness versus where I've been able to get to now, where I see that it's actually the greatest source of my power. It's just to own it, to claim it, and then it doesn't have the same control over me as when I was trying to pretend like I had everything together and I never experienced those negative emotions.
Well, and I think it builds respect and connection among people. We are definitely like, none of us are negative Nancy's here at E.Leigh's HQ. We're very serious about, positive thinking. But that doesn't mean that we don't have setbacks. It doesn't mean that we don't express
Mhm.
fear or frustration. Um, I think that vulnerability builds connection between
Yeah.
people because we all experience it. And I think I maybe mentioned this at Decide It's Your Turn, but I had a question from someone at one point and they said, how do you not feel fear? And that was just
Mm.
mind blowing to me because I was like, I'm scared every day. Okay, sister. Like, I'm scared every
Yeah.
single day. I just think that for me, the way I feel fear is I want to get out of it as quickly as possible. And I think that the quickest way through is right through it, is to feel
Yeah.
it, acknowledge it, go there, and then take action.
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes we don't want to acknowledge the fear because it's exactly what you said, is we want to seem
Mm.
fearless. And I've kind of stopped using that phrase for a lot of things as an inspiration because no one's fearless.
Yeah.
I just think that's BS. We all experience fear. And the quicker that we acknowledge that, I think the stronger we get.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important for, especially at the stage of business that you are at. So now you have this operation that has multiple locations, several states, multi-million dollars in revenue. And what I loved so much about you is that you're the kind of girl who's willing to admit you're still experiencing fear. You're still being challenged today. So what is something actively right now that you are being challenged by in your business?
Oh gosh. So right now, it's been a really slow month for us. And so even just wrapping that head around, like, okay, where's our traffic? Where is, because we measure our traffic, we measure our conversion, how much people are spending, all of these things, and looking at our metrics and being like, okay, where's the missing puzzle piece?
Mm,
So of course I'd say probably a little bit of anxiety over fear with that. So that's it. But another thing is I recently joined a CEO peer group, and I am like the small fry in this group. So there's about 20 of us, and almost everyone there has a much, much larger business than me that they're operating. And I'm only one of only two women in the group, and the majority are men that are 45 plus. So being a part of that group really stretched me because you have to share all of your business financials. You have to be very vulnerable with the group
mm,
about personal life, your marriage, your family, health and wellness. There are all these different aspects that you must share with the group. So, I have a presentation next month about my business, and I'm feeling a little stressed about it. I just want to live up to expectation. And I'm having to wrap my head around like the idea that all of them have experienced wins, losses, fires in their business.
mm.
So that's just a couple of things that just immediately I'm
Yeah.
feeling a little anxiety about.
Oh, so relatable. So relatable. And it actually ties into, I think this is a great place to start tying this all together with a beautiful bow. And you had talked about, putting yourself in proximity with people who are going to stretch you and grow
Yes.
you. Would you say that has been a key to your success and your growth so far?
Absolutely. I
What is
think
that?
that, oh, go ahead,
What
Liz.
has that looked like? I know I'm just so curious to hear because that's a place that I'm in. So I want you to finish that thought, and then I'd love to hear just what that has looked like for you.
Yeah, that's been an evolution as well. I talked early on about my dad being, kind of showing me these amazing thought leaders and introducing them to me in my teen years. So it's really exciting to me to watch the evolution of the past few years of people actually starting to acknowledge this and this to become very mainstream. Because for a long time in my life, talking about um, thought leadership and manifestation and mindset was kind of a woo woo thing. So early on in my business, I was very serious about protecting what I shared with people. And I
Mm,
only shared the depths of my soul and my fear or things I was really excited about with people I trusted, people that I felt like were my, like, you don't need yes people, but people that were going to support you no matter what. And I had a few friends that were really kind of into this whole mindset thing with me, that I shared early on my struggles and things I was really wrestling with. And then also, my dad, I spent a huge amount of time and still do spend a huge amount of time around him. And he has become one of my closest, dearest friends and mentors. But over the years, I've noticed that my friend groups, I have some friends that I've been friends with since second grade, but I also have some newer friends. And it's interesting if you watch the shift that's happened within my friend groups. And it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I can't be around these people any longer. It was just something that as my vibration elevated, I started naturally attracting like-minded women into my circle. And it felt really good being around those people. And so naturally, I just found myself making more and more plans with those women because it felt really good. And it wasn't just all this, we're going to share happy things with each other. We were sharing really difficult, hard things with each other too. But I felt lighter after leaving their presence. So definitely being around just people that I felt good around and who had like-minded ideas about what they wanted out of life. Even to this day, I have a couple groups of girls that we kind of are each other's accountability partners, where we get together for coffee and we talk about real life and real challenges. And we even have a little Marco Polo group where we, because I love video chats because it's easy to see people's body language and expressions. But we'll share just if something hard happens to us that day. It's like a safe space for us to say, hey, I'm really excited about this, or hey, this was really challenging for me and I just like need some support.
Yeah.
So just it's been an evolution. I feel like that aspect of my journey as well. But just pay attention to how you feel around people. I have a Peloton and I take classes from Robin. I don't know if you follow.
I don't have a Peloton, but I know the craze and the instructors are all like legends.
They are amazing. But there was a quote. This is my year of no is what I'm saying. Shonda Rhimes had a year of yes. I'm a big pleaser too. So I started out this year saying I'm going to work out my commitments. But, anything that I truly don't want to commit to this year, I'm saying no to. So, but I was on my Peloton bike a couple months ago and Robin, one of the instructors, said, if it's not raising my vibe or my bank account, the answer is no. And so that's how I'm feeling with friends, not the bank account part, but like if they are not raising my vibration and if I don't feel really good whenever we leave, I'm going to have to love them from afar because it's just, I don't have the space and energy for people that aren't in it with me.
Yeah. And realizing that it's not doing either of you a service for almost trying to drag those people along. I always say there's a wide open door for them.
Yes.
And I'm going in the direction that I'm going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
that was tough.
absolutely. Yeah. And you can't, that's been a really hard lesson for me is I always try to save people. My husband jokes, he's like, you could be a social worker. But that is a lesson that I've been working on boundaries and I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for years. That is not something I would ever get rid of. And working on setting those healthy boundaries with people and saying, you know what, maybe this isn't the time or space for us right now, or acknowledging that I'm not as powerful as sometimes I think I am. And I can't change people's minds about things.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I just looked at the time. I could literally talk to you all day. I'm fairly certain we could spend an entire 24 hours just going back and forth on all of this. So, where is the best place for people to find you, to connect with E.Leigh's? And I don't know if you want to share any announcements about online.
Yes. Yes, we are launching our online store soon, like within the next few weeks.
Oh, so excited.
Which that's a whole other story, but we are going to start adding things online. But you can find us on Instagram at E.Leigh's Boutique. You can find me personally. I'm not that interesting, but if you do want to connect, it's at Erin Hohnbaum on Instagram. that's the best way to connect with me. And then of course I do some retail consulting. If you're someone in the retail space, I take on a very select amount of clients annually. And you can email us at hello@shopeleys.com, and one of the girls will get back to you about those rates and that availability for the rest of the year.
Awesome. And I will make sure to link all of that for our listeners so they can have easy access to finding you. I personally, and I know my closet, cannot wait for you to go online, because every time I look at the Instagram account, I am like ready to book a plane ticket to one of your locations.
I feel like
so
you should
cute.
come to Little Rock for
I
sure.
think we should. Yeah.
Bring a
we'll have to-
Powerhouse Women, event to Little Rock.
That statement is how most of these crazy travel tour dates have started. Someone said, hey, you should come here. So not opposed at all.
Love it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So we like to end these episodes by reminding women that we are all the same. We're not meant to do this alone. And just to give a little encouragement to the woman who is right now building her dream, chasing that next big idea. And so I would just love to know from your story, what do you want women to know that's going to encourage them to take that next step for themselves?
Oh gosh. I think that they are far more capable, stronger, and smarter than they could ever imagine. And that they can do hard things and they can build wonderful things.
Oh my goodness. Erin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.